Love.
So there you go.
Yeah. So, wow.
Sorry.
Whose phone is that?
That was just my alert to say that I said something good.
We need a little chime, Ethan. Ding, ding, ding. We can trigger a little chime every time someone says something good.
The word.
Oh, and so how do we do that in practice?
I have the exact answer.
Okay.
Evan's got it.
Perfect.
Everybody,
You're welcome.
Vote in the comments.
Are you ready? I'm just going to say it.
Okay.
Star Trek.
What? What does that even mean?
All right,
Wait.
okay.
Just think about it, though, for a minute.
Just think.
Star Trek.
All right, I'm sorry that I made you think about that.
All right, so what are we talking about tonight, gents? Are we ready to move into the content?
Let's. You know what, John Mark? Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Oh man, I hear my dog barking in the
that the
background.
dog?
There must be a human on the sidewalk somewhere.
The dog's up there saying, "I want to go downstairs and lick John Mark's feet."
And this is
Every
the
time
men's
I'm
show,
here,
so
it's
Nick,
weird.
of course, has the manliest dog ever, if I'm not mistaken.
It's this big. This
Massive.
big.
It's a huge mastiff. It's
Nope.
crazy.
Nope. It is a small little Pomeranian
It's like
called
this
Fifi.
much body
Fifi's
and like
the
that
best.
much hair. Is like that's kind of how the dog
That's
is.
accurate.
All right, so who's introducing the first topic today?
I will. I'm also trying to pull the chat up here so that I can make sure I'm reading comments and
You want a
stuff.
cigar?
Yes.
You know what? Light up, gentlemen.
I don't have a cigar for you.
Oh,
It's okay,
Want a
because
pipe?
I don't do it.
Oh well. Be that way.
Sorry.
All right.
I probably
So
shouldn't introduce any of the topics,
You shouldn't.
being I don't have a strong command of any of them or what they are.
It's okay.
Well, you can be on my side of the table, because
A
I'm
reminder.
right there.
A reminder. Okay, what is the men's show? We're not here speaking as experts. We're obviously not experts here, but what we're trying to do is exemplify and practice the art of good, virtuous, manly conversation. And that's precisely talking about things sometimes that you're not an expert on and not acting like you're an expert,
Yeah.
but trying to seek truth together and trying
that.
to get better perspective, trying to see if we can carry it a little bit further and leave a little bit better men than we were before the conversation.
I've literally never loved anything you said more than this moment.
Dude, I'm feeling it right back at you. Yes.
Cool.
I didn't say
Got
anything.
like a chopper guy.
That wasn't you?
Well, I mean, all right. Anyway, so today, the first topic that we're going to dive into here was inspired by the instigation, shall we say, of the.
No, it was just instigated, man.
It was instigated by.
There you go. Nailed
That
it.
sounds nefarious.
The first topic was instigated by the Synod on Synodality, and you might be watching or listening and thinking to yourself, "What the frick is Synod or Synodality?" These are interesting words. John Mark, do you have like the proper definition of the word synod?
No, but the Bishop of Toledo, our good Bishop Daniel Thomas.
Yes.
Raise your glasses to him, Daniel Thomas. Actually explained that a little bit in his document, Leading the Flock, Communion Participation Mission, where he explained, let's see, the very word synod and synodality mean. Simply put, the word synod comes from the Greek word meaning assembly or meeting, and as presented in the International Theological Commission's 2018 document, Synodality in the Life and Mission of the Church. Synodality refers to members of the church moving forward in communion with Syn, S-Y-N, Christ, and one another along a path, odos, under the impulse of the Holy Spirit.
Love.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
So, wow.
Sorry.
Whose phone is that?
That was just my alert to say that I said something good. There you go.
We need a little chime, Ethan. Ding, ding, ding. We can trigger a little chime every time someone says something good.
The word.
Oh, and don't forget, viewers and listeners, if you want to vote on like who says the best stuff, like last time.
Oh, gosh.
Oh yeah, the best. Who has the best words?
Who has the best
words of all the words?
That actually became pretty entertaining. All right, so Synod on Synodality.
And a
So,
little insulting.
Yeah, I yelled at Pete that night. I felt bad about it.
oh,
Yeah,
that's okay. We're brothers.
I think he forgave me.
Our relationship endures. All of our
I haven't
relationships.
spoken to Pete since.
Oh my gosh. Notice how Pete's not here. All right, so the Synod on Synodality. So one of the things that this has to do with, Pope Francis indicated that he was concerned about how many decisions are made that don't take into account enough of the perspectives or the concerns or even some of the wisdom that some of the laity might have. And so this is kind of a 2-year process that's going to help the leadership in our church reassess the degree to which laity or non-clergy plays a role in leadership, decision making, that kind of stuff. John Mark, from the article, is there anything you want to follow up with that?
Well, I mean, you said that this was going to be kind of a leaping off point.
Yeah, we're not talking about the Synod, but
about the church and kind of the relationships. And so, again, good Bishop Thomas here, our pastor, is giving us some direction right off the bat on how we should be thinking even about the Synod. And he says, let's see, he gives us something that two attitudes. Okay, as we embark on such a synodal path in this diocesan preparation phase, two extremes are to be avoided. On the one hand, the attitude or ideology which, even before any mutual prayer and discernment, has decided that it is a waste of time and there can be no worthwhile outcome. That's one extreme. And on the other hand, the attitude or ideology which, even before any mutual prayer and discernment, has decided that the results must change the nature and teaching of the church. And even before that, I didn't read the part before that, but before that, saying that this is not about the church being democratic. We don't have laity and priests getting together to vote on issues in the church. That's not what this is about. But it is about that there is kind of there's a term in the church, the sensus fidei, I think is the term, but the sense of the faithful, the sort of the zeitgeist of the church. And it doesn't mean, again, that the church just moves with the times, but it does mean that part of the living, breathing life of the church is applying the wisdom, applying the principles, applying the doctrines to the new situations of our day. I mean, again, the church has always taught that abortion is wrong, that the human life is valuable, but we've never really had to deal with the specific issues and situations of today. So it's not about coming up with new doctrines or throwing out the old ones, but it's saying, okay, let's apply the old to the new situation. But to do that well, we do have to kind of be in touch with what people are actually going through. And so it would seem to me that if there's going to be something positive out of this, it's the church figuring out how to hold fast to the truth, to the tradition, but be more in touch with the actual needs of the people, and specifically in terms of, again, the strategic plan of Vatican II, keeping that in mind, that called all of us to holiness, it reminded us that we're all called to holiness. So that's what everyone's called to. Are we figuring out on the localist level, like what are the barriers to that? What do we need to do as a church to pursue that? I'm talking too much. I'm gonna smoke.
I'll tell you what I do. I post on Facebook and I post on Instagram, and then my job as the laity is done. I have informed the people. Now they know the right thing to do, and I'm done.
That's brilliant.
You're such a gift to the church.
You're welcome. So that's what you have to do, right?
Yeah,
as the laity.
and so this is everything you just explained, John Mark, is right on the money. When I first heard about the Synod, I actually
I don't know.
No, why are you smirking?
Well, I don't know.
Because he knows what you're going to say.
I don't know what you're going to say.
Prejudging.
I was thinking about the obviously there's been jokes made about the Synod and Citadelity. It just, even actually the beginning of the bishop's document, it's like Synod is said like 9 times in the first 2 sentences, which is kind of funny that you have to say it so much.
Yeah. Okay, so I sent a message.
You asked me.
I sent a message to my wife asking her to bring down an ashtray for Robin. She hasn't seen the message yet. The bubble is telling me so. So, okay, Google, could you bring down an ashtray, please, my darling? Thank you. I love you. You're amazing and beautiful.
Also, smoking is bad for you.
You didn't say broadcast.
Oh, shoot. Okay, Google, stop. Okay, Google, broadcast. My beloved, could you please bring an ashtray quickly for the cigars that are already lit because we're morons? I love you and you're beautiful.
That was even better than the first
Yeah.
one. That was a good read.
So
And insulting of your friends. Thank you.
Well, okay,
Good
conglomerately, we all did not think about this. I was being factual.
Go on with your...
Go on.
Anyways.
I knew the entire time, and I didn't say anything.
All right. So anyways, to the point that you were making, John Mark, which I think you articulated that beautifully. When I first heard about the Synod, I was in a context where it was a priest telling his community about it. And there was an excitement. And I also want to clarify for any of our local viewers and listeners, this was not in our diocese that I observed this. But there was an excitement on the part both of the priest and the people in the congregation listening to him. There was an excitement about the idea of the laity having more authority in our church. And so that prompted me to use the Synod and the institution of this 2-year process that Pope Francis is taking us on. It led me to think this is a conversation worth having in terms of what is the relationship between the laity and the clergy and authority and leadership and I have my own personal views that I don't think are my personal views. I feel like I have an understanding of the proper way to look at this, but I think that we should talk through this because any of us could be missing some element of this dynamic. And viewers and listeners, whether you're Catholic or Christian, Protestant Christian, this is relevant stuff because a lot of Protestants don't understand the dynamics of authority, just like a lot of Catholics don't understand the dynamics of authority in our church, and what our role is in that. So that's why I wanted to bring this.
Yeah. So authority, right?
Yeah. It really comes down to that conversation.
We're in an age that's so suspicious of authority, and yet everybody wants it for themselves. I once heard somebody say about the Catholic Church. So I work with non-Catholic Christians who are thinking about becoming Catholic. So we're always talking about these issues of authority. And I don't remember which apologist out there once pointed out that the church is the least authoritative institution in history, which sounds crazy because we're always thinking the church is always making rules and the Pope is up there. No, the church is the least authoritative because the church
Thank you so much
is very, very. Andrew is going to correct me.
When did Andrew get here? Andrew, come on in, man.
A brief message from Andrew. Sorry about. Anyway,
no worries.
The church is here to preserve and protect, but very minimally to try to innovate anything new. It's to protect and preserve the teachings of Christ, the apostolic tradition of the faith, and to apply it. But when people think, I want more authority in the church, I want to get in there and do what I want to do. And the whole church's point is there to be a steward of what it has.
Yeah, it's not the church's job to decide the truth and to distribute it to the people. It's to discern the truth and to discover the truth and to proclaim it.
Yeah. Well, and that it described like that. It's like, well, then that to some degree that is the job of every Catholic. Is that part of it?
And authority, really, we speak with authority when we speak the truth. I think that's fundamentally true. Would you say that? Because when we don't speak with the truth, in a very deep sense, we don't speak with authority.
But I think that the challenge with that
is... But then you can't just say, I'm deciding the truth now.
Right. Like, what is the truth? What do we base that on? Because a lot of people, I've known a lot of people on both sides of the aisle, and I don't mean the political aisle, I mean the church aisle. I've known people who feel very passionate about their, traditional approach to faith, and I've known people that feel very passionate about their more charismatic approach to faith, and then those aren't even the only two categories, but they are kind of presented as though they're juxtaposed often, which I don't think is fair anyways. But I've known people coming from these different angles that in the passion that they feel for their tradition, their expression of the faith, they can very quickly latch on to certain ideas that may or may not be explicitly from the heart of the church, or maybe are too one-dimensional. They aren't reflective enough of a broader worldview, a broader understanding of what the church is positing. And so, yeah, Kevin, you look like you're having thoughts listening to that.
I am brand new in the church as well, so I thought through these things. I just came to the church in April, and all of these were going through my head at the same time. Just to circle back to the Protestant thing real quick. A lot of Protestants don't know that, if there's any Protestants watching, that your church has an authority. If you're in the Methodist church, if you're in the Lutheran church, they have bishops. Someone is making decisions on what is in your liturgy. So you cannot escape the authority no matter what you do. And I think that's very important. So if we know that there has to be an authority, it might as well be the church that Jesus founded. And that's why I became Catholic, because that is the truth. But when we're discerning what is me as the laity, what am I supposed to do? I think a lot of times the best thing the laity can do is just to be really good moms and dads.
Ooh,
I think if you raise a holy Catholic family that images, the actual Holy Family, Mary, Joseph, and Jesus, then you're already doing a really good job. And if we can start there, then all of these other decisions become a lot easier.
In some sense, the church, people have it upside down when they are desiring authority, or they're too worried over the authority, because again, we need to think of it in the other way around. The family or the individuals in community living out the Christian life. That's sort of the peak and pinnacle of the Christian life. The peak and pinnacle of the Christian life isn't like what's happening in a synod or in the Vatican. Like that's an important part of the church. It's necessary. It's part what the Holy Spirit has given us. But that's not where the life of the church happens. The life of the church happens in people's homes, in our local parish, in our neighborhoods where we're actually carrying out our Christian lives. And so, again, the church and her hierarchy and the authority is there to preserve and safeguard and interpret the truth in new and weird ages we find ourselves in. But we can't get into this thing where we're kind of like turning our attention to that and getting so worried about it that we're stopping living the actual Christian life, which that is our business. That is the business of the laity, is to actually carry out the life of the church.
I love that. Yeah, and Kevin, you got some props in the comments for your comments, and I guess by extension, John Mark, since you were kind of piggybacking on that,
No, it's all Kevin.
And we got Mike Tenney saying that Rob has the best words in general. It seems, and followed up by Tenney also saying, but Kevin has the best words on Facebook. Yeah, and that is so true, Kevin. I mean, that idea of like the notion even of a non-denominational church is such a misnomer, because essentially a non-denominational church is a denomination, and it properly would be named after whoever that pastor is.
Right.
Right.
Because that's the one person making the authoritative decisions,
right,
leading his flock, and now
right,
he's the Jesus.
Or the Pope.
The Jesus.
The Pope.
The Pope. That's much better.
Yeah.
I accidentally did a big Lebowski reference.
No, but that is a great point. And then, you know, whether you're a Protestant in that circumstance or a Catholic, like we can find ourselves having that tendency to like, oh, I know better than my church leadership. I know. Yeah. And so I think part of the question to discuss here too is like, why is this a relevant question? Like, you know, we were just talking about family being the principal expression of our faith. Yes, sir?
Maybe the families are broken right now.
I think the
You
big
can
question.
take it somewhere else if you want.
I vote Rob talks now. Go.
I don't want to interrupt anyone. And
This is a synod.
all I do is interrupt everybody.
We are way past
This is
that,
a Democratic synod, and I vote unilaterally that Rob talks next.
Thank you. Thank you, John Mark. I think the kind of question we're not honing in on is like, we think of the authority of the church and the authority we have as Christians, and like, how is that authority the same, and how is that authority different? What do we owe to our hierarchy? What deference, listening, disposition, obedience, what does that look like versus the authority that we have?
That's a great question.
Especially, I think a lot of people find themselves in conflict, and many times I think that conflict can be resolved from listening and discerning mutually. Synodality. Oh my gosh.
Oh,
wow.
Shoot.
We see it,
Full circle.
I'm unconvinced.
Pit ourselves against, the authority of the church puts us in a very bad position.
Right.
But that doesn't mean we defer our responsibility to discern the truth and just like, simply everything we hear. I don't know. How do you say that? It's necessary for us to participate in that process.
What process?
Which process?
Well, the process of discerning truths and things like that.
And I think that's the heart of what the Synod is about.
Applying it, or like actually living out the faith.
Discerning, applying it.
Yeah. Of course, there's a bunch of things to keep in mind here. We do know that part of the reason that Bishop Thomas even has to address those two extremes is because those two extremes are alive in the church, and it's easy to get sucked into them. One of the reasons it's easy to get sucked into them is because we're in this weird place in history, unique place in church history, where the Pope, trips, coughs loudly on an airplane, and like it's all over social media suddenly.
Yeah.
We've never been in a place in history where like the regular people trying to live out their faith are getting like moment to moment coverage of what's going on in the Vatican.
Quite poor coverage, I might add.
And it's not necessary to we have the catechism, we have the sacraments, we can live out the Christian life. And so again, the church and the hierarchy and the synods, there's purposes for those, and hopefully we pray for them that they will fulfill their purposes. But it's very easy to kind of like take our eyes off the ball of where we're actually called to live out the faith.
It's
And
like getting sucked into the news. Like we're just
It
like,
is,
what's new
yeah.
and what's novel
Right.
and what's something to argue about and that's changing, rather than what's real to me in my direct life and what am I called to do right now. It
Totally.
can be a real distraction.
And to be like 100% honest, I heard the word synod on Synodality, heard no other coverage or anything, and I instantly thought talk on talking. But the bishop's statement was just so good, and it, yes, we are talking. Or so he says that the word synod is Greek for meeting. So it's like a meeting on meetings, or maybe this is another document I read. Sorry, guys, not an expert, but like a meeting on meetings. But there was context for synodality, like a meeting on meetings, and it's how we meet each other. So it's a meeting on how we meet each other, and we need to talk about how we're walking with each other and that type of thing. So I feel like the wording probably could have been a little better. The branding, maybe a little bit better. That picture that comes with it, maybe a little bit better. We're not specifically talking about, this is a launching off point, but just, 100% honesty. Like, it's very easy to hear something and then, our biases click. And then it's like, oh yeah, I need to fight against those things.
Yeah.
But
It is again, we're not perfect people. We're not in a perfect church.
Okay,
and
speak for yourself,
And
John
it's entirely possible that there are, as people suspect, there's some bureaucracy here. There's some of this stuff that maybe isn't great, that's unnecessary. But again, we have to remain in a place of peace. And so the notion of synodality, I mean, it's kind of, to get meta here for a moment, it's kind of what we're trying to practice on this show.
Yeah.
Like, we don't come, as we said at the beginning, we don't come on the show as experts, pretending to be experts, or getting on the show to tell you exactly what to believe because I said it. No, we're here as just fellow Catholics trying to live out the faith. And what we're trying to practice is synodality.
Nice.
That we get together, we hear each other, we try to express the truth as best as we understand it, but we also allow ourselves to have insight, the ways that we didn't see it before. We're practicing the art of conversation, the art of accompaniment, the art of trying to live the faith together. And
I still don't like the word synodality, but I agree with everything you just said.
So,
you put the sin in synodality there.
Oh,
I'm just kidding.
so is it
For real.
right to have the understanding though that the synodality's focus is between specifically the clergy and the laity?
I don't know. Is that the?
Is that true?
Every quote that I've read from Pope Francis indicates that.
Okay, so I mean, there's another great point there too. One thing that Teresa and I have talked often on Elevate Ordinary, and it's just part of our lives, is that we often see diocesan priests, for instance, that live very solitary lives, and in this, especially in the weird world we live today with all the suspicion and the scandals and stuff like that, they're more isolated.
Yep.
They're more like, I'm just going to live my quiet little bachelor life and do my stuff, whatever, and they don't have families inviting them over to dinner. They don't feel comfortable, and they're not invited to stay in touch with the people they're trying to serve. We love the example of John Paul II. I mean, he was such a man's man. He was such a family guy. He would do these trips with these students when he was a young priest. He stayed very connected to people, and I think that really was reflective then in his papacy of how he was able to really speak powerfully the gospel into people's lives in this really real human way. But I think that would seem to me to be something that we would want to talk about and understand. Like, what is that relationship supposed to look like? Is the priest supposed to be off, kind of on a mountain and the people are just there? Or like, what is that relationship between the pastors and their flocks?
Something that came to mind as you were saying that was the simplicity of the times versus what we have right now. And that's kind of what you were getting at at the beginning of that. Yeah. Like, I think about, Poland back in that day, what it would have been to be a pastor of a parish then versus being a pastor of a parish now here in America in 2021. You're a business manager as much as you are a sacramental priest.
Right.
And that to me is a problem. Like, you're an administrator of a business, and you weren't trained to be a CEO or a, you know what I mean? Like, and so you're oppressed by all this stress, anxiety, and so many of the parishes are struggling financially and have all these different pressures. And so there's so many dynamics at play now that the pastors of our parishes are having to juggle, not to mention very rarely having other priests with them serving at that same parish. So not only are they the business administrator, but they're also the only priest often. And in contrast with what I have to imagine would have been the case, just from the bits I've read from, for example, the book that Jason Everett wrote about John Paul II and stuff, the dynamic would have been so different. He was primarily their pastor, and he had the freedom to serve them that way. And I think just the simplicity of what life was back then, it made such a huge difference.
Yeah. And again, so that's part of this. We have the truths, we hold on to the truths, but then we still have to actually try to live them out in this day and age. And each age presents new challenges. And so we can't just do the same old thing in the same way we've always been doing it if it's not working.
That's a great
point. We have to apply it to the time.
And I think one of the challenges for me, like when I saw this community getting all excited about, oh, we're going to have a bigger voice in the church and we're going to have more authority as lay people, it really struck a nerve for me, because one of the things that drew me to Catholicism was the authority of the bishops and priests, apostolic succession. I mean, that literally is the reason to be Catholic, and then for me, in the context of my journey, it's the reason to believe in God, the apostolic succession. And so the idea that God can, I mean, the fact that we have this incredible lineage from now all the way to the original apostles of ordained bishops through the laying on of hands that we have, like, essentially in paperwork. Yes, Rob?
Just, I mean, not to counter that, but, you know, that also, as baptized Christians, you know, we are drawn into that lineage in a sense.
Yes.
And we do have a participation
The priesthood of all believers.
in our own place in life.
And that's why this is a conversation, because it does get a little bit muddy, but there is, without question, a distinction between what they are and what we are.
Yeah. And none of us are bishops of dioceses. Like, we can, I mean, it's what people do when they watch a football game. You know, they're quarterbacking from the couch, you know, and we're sitting on the couch and we're trying to call the plays when we're not the bishop of Rome. We're not the bishop of our diocese, you know? Yeah,
I mean, the football team is actually a good analogy, thinking of, again, the fact here that some people, when they see difference or when they see hierarchy, they want to eliminate difference. They want to eliminate hierarchy. Yeah. Rather than recognizing, no, like for instance, men and women. Well, men need to be manly men. Women need to be womanly women, feminine women. I don't know.
Yeah, why not?
They need to be fully themselves. The point isn't to try to eliminate difference. The point is to try to be fully whom you were created to be. And so we have different roles in the church. And, like, again, there is a priesthood of all believers. We do have an authority by our baptism to carry out Christ's work in our lives. But that's our specific mission. And again, Vatican II reminded us all, we're all called to be holy. It's not just the priests, it's not just the monks, it's not just them that are called to be radically sold out for the gospel. No, they're called to be radically holy and fully, you know, all in the gospel in their role, but we are too in ours. And that's how the life of the church works. And so, again, we need to discuss how that harmony of roles works in this age, but this shouldn't be an excuse for anyone to take the eye off the ball of their own vocation that they can fully live out, even if the church is messy, even if there are bad bishops, or even if, you know, like the church is just a messy family, we can still live out our vocation.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Absolutely. And it makes me think about, like, early in my journey back to faith, or for the first time faith that meant anything in my life, there were a couple of relationships I had early on, brotherhood, that made a huge difference and impression in my understanding of, like, respecting authority, which was super ironic because I came back to the church for the authority. Once I was in it, I found myself getting very frustrated by certain things that I thought weren't being done the way they should be. Rob, you were one of the people that early on really challenged me to, even in frustration about certain things that a certain priest was doing, to still respect and treat with dignity their priesthood and their role, their vocation, and find a way to channel and express what I was concerned about that still did not contradict the dignity with which I should hold them in my own heart and mind. And to this day, there are moments where I'll catch myself and I'll go back in memory to a certain conversation. I still remember where we were sitting, where you challenged me that way. And I really appreciated that back in that time, because it turns out since then I've had to do a lot of work with a lot of priests and even bishop, and like, you know, that conversation has made such a big impact in the way I interact with them since then. So I appreciate that. But my concern, and Kevin, I want to hear what you're about to say, but my concern is, how do we, in the day-to-day, like, you know, where there is space to me for this synod on synodality is like, gosh, sometimes they don't see the full picture that we might see because of our different vocations. Sometimes there are things that they're a little bit blind to, because all of us are very blind to whatever's not right in front of us, right in our scope of vision. And so there, you know, and I can say with confidence and love and compassion for our priests and bishops, because of the work I've had to do, I can say with confidence, though, they do need other perspectives. And so how do we do that in practice?
It's a great way to put it.
I have the exact answer.
Okay.
Kevin's got it.
Perfect.
Everybody,
You're
hold
welcome.
on. Vote in the comments.
Are you ready?
I'm ready for it.
I'm just going to say it.
Okay.
Star Trek.
What? What does that even mean?
All right.
Wait.
Okay.
Just think about it, though, for a moment.
Just think.
Star Trek.
All right. I'm sorry that I made you think about that. All right. So, like you're saying, like our priests, they're gonna make mistakes, but they're leading us into battle. Like our priest, our bishop, the Pope, they're leading us into battle. Of course, they're gonna make mistakes, but what does Jean-Luc Picard do from The Next Generation? Come on, guys.
Ethan's over there going, amen. What?
Ethan knows. Ethan's my homie. All right.
I
So
do not know.
it's a huge table, and he listens to all the perspectives, right? Which is kind of like what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And it makes people think. Different people have different perspectives. He takes all of that in, and then he has to make a choice, because you have to make a choice. And it's better to make a choice sometimes. Okay, not always, but it's better to make a choice usually than to not make a choice. And if a choice has to be made, it's better to get the perspectives. You go into battle.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when you're in battle, the worst thing you can do is stay idle, because then the enemy takes over.
So in other
great
words,
example,
we should have a synod on synodality.
But like John Mark said, there's bureaucracy, there is politics
No,
and
but
all
that's
that.
great.
But that would be the ideal, of course.
So what you said, Nick, and then the example you gave are, again, great ones. I mean, I don't know how we're doing on time here, but
We should bring it in for a landing.
well, let's make it real practical then. Again, so again, where is the virtue of obedience in the life of the Christian? Like, what are the do's and don'ts of relating to the hierarchy of the church, the authority of the church? I mean, some of the easy, obvious don'ts are like, okay, like I'm a little disgruntled about something in the church. Getting on social media and complaining about it doesn't do anyone any good.
Don't be like me, guys.
It does nothing.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
I mean,
I've never seen you do
They're
that.
just like, if we were to make a don't list, like we just see that everywhere in the church today. The don't list. It's just like all obvious out there. We should be praying for our priests.
Yes.
We should go be speaking to our pastors individually, constructively about our concerns. We should be focusing more on our bishop, praying for him, write him a letter, talk to him, really listen to his words, his attempt to guide. I think a point that you made, Kevin, there, or you were kind of making, was that
Totally
in any organization, any group, whether it's the church or a business or whatever that,
or the Star Trek Enterprise.
like you
100%.
do need to. There has to be this dynamic of like the leader needs to lead.
Yeah.
Right. And so like he needs perspective, he needs some pushback, but ultimately we have to be moving in a direction. And so there has to be like a right interplay of us, giving the proper honor to the authority of the church, the people in the church, praying for our leaders, and then doing our job damn well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And having a real relationship with our priests, the priests we know. I feel like we often, like, you get the people from the pews who go up and tell the pastor what they think, give them his ear. Like, I work for the church, and I know that happens a whole lot. But like, to be in relationship with our priest and to tell them the truth, your experience, your perspective in love, and I think there's a great deal of mutuality that can happen from there, but not when you don't know them or when you don't care about them.
That's
if you're just
exactly
like, this is a person and I disagree with him on, maybe this and this, and that's your disposition towards them, and this is not somebody who I love and who is for better, for worse, a father in my life.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know,
And then coupled with that, I think humility, like the humility to really understand that while it's important for you to be honest, you very likely could also be wrong. There might be things you don't know that the pastor knows, that the parish council knows, or whatever. There might be considerations that you are incapable of having that would make your opinion completely a moot point. They're just the humility that if you want your pastor to be humble enough to discover he's wrong about something, you need to be that humble too. And I think that's a really important point too. So this has been great. I was hopeful this would be a good topic, and I think it is. I mean,
I'm feeling very synodal.
You feeling synodal?
I'm feeling the synergy.
I'm feeling synodalical.
That's pretty delicious what you just
Ladies
said
and
right there.
gentlemen,
I'm feeling cynical.
if you have enjoyed
The synapses are firing, you know. I mean, it's just amazing.
the synodaxes, no, that's too far. Anyways, that's too much.
Your syntax is a little off there, Nick.
Yeah.
Moving on.
So if you have enjoyed this topic and it has in any benefited your heart and mind
On this syndicated show,
Syndal.
we got to go to the next topic.
Visit
Please. This is
themensshow.com and
terrible.
become a patron today. And there's a lot of fun stuff that you get by joining.
all I can think of are SYN
Gregory
words.
Wright says we are not the Bible believing church. Okay, maybe just a quick little
Nice.
detour on that one. Gregory, thank you so much for your comment. Number one, we actually do believe in the Bible. We actually compiled the Bible.
We did not. I just.
Well, it
make a
wasn't us.
distinction.
We weren't around.
Rob had a hand in it.
I was not there.
Perhaps what Gregory is alluding to is that there is a conception in some, again, wings of the divided Christianity we're in, of that we are a religion of the book. You know, again, of a scripture alone, like that the whole life. Of the
I'm
church
a
comes out of
Bible
Scripture.
believing American right here. I tell
Kevin
you
is.
what.
Oh gosh.
But that's not the structure of the church. The Bible,
I talk like that sometimes.
you know, the canon of Scripture came out of the life of the church,
Yes.
the liturgy of the church.
it was
And
a
so-
council of bishops.
and so it is a premier. It's an important source. It's one of the legs of the stool there in terms of you know the root of our tradition of our faith, but it's also there with you know the tradition of the church and the authority of the church. It's all that together. So no, we're not merely the religion of the book as some parts of Christianity would look at it, but it's an important
the
piece.
book came forth from the church.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the church did not come forth from the book.
Correct.
That's a great question, though. We should do like more Q&A.
Yeah,
stuff.
we should. So
we should do
viewers,
that, yeah.
listeners, Greg, thank you so much. Gregory, I don't know if you go by Greg or Gregory. Thank you so much for that comment, and keep them coming, everyone. We would love to interact that way. You know, and I'll maybe tie that with a bow by saying there were centuries, hundreds of years that the Christian church that we would come to know as the Catholic Church that we have today, the Christian church survived without a New Testament. There were writings, there were letters, there were gospels, there was a whole lot of stuff, and it was out of a concern for consistency, out of a concern for us to have what?
Oh, I'll say it after you're done.
We
I'm
need
scared
to
now.
wrap this episode up, brothers.
It was out of a concern for everyone to be looking at the same stuff and for that stuff to be the right stuff that the bishops came together and said, let's put together an official canon that would become the New Testament that we would all get to read together at Mass. The Bible was really put together for the Mass. And it's a blessing that we each get to have one at home. But if that was Jesus's primary concern, that we would each have a Bible and that the Bible would be the only source of truth, then he would have left us both the canon of the New Testament and a divine printing press, neither of which he left us. He left us the church. John Mark?
I was just going to say this funny meme that I saw on Facebook.
Oh, gosh.
One of the guys I follow, the Catholic Redneck, super funny.
Oh, my gosh.
All he's a great guy. All he says is, Jesus started a church. He didn't start a book club. That's all you need to know.
That's actually really funny.
Did you dress just so that you were ready
Yeah,
to
is
say
that, are
quote
you
today?
like channeling him right now?
You were like ready for that one.
He's my uncle, actually.
But Gregory, sorry, I definitely don't want to seem flippant whatsoever because your concern is a very valid one. But hopefully somewhere within our being silly, but also hopefully informative. Hopefully there was a response there that was helpful.
visit the Coming Home Network. For more
absolutely.
That's a great
What
idea.
about
yeah.
the meme?
about that. Oh, the meme. Well, the meme
love
was
memes.
there are two types of Pauline epistles. There's one where my brothers and sisters in Corinth, God be with you, and then there's would you little weirdos just like not go crazy when I leave for like 2 seconds? Like those are the two, because that's what many of the books of the New Testament were.
Yeah,
They were Paul's
absolutely.
letters to different communities about what was going on in
Right,
the community.
That's what's going to happen with the Synod. They're just like trying to get all of our opinions so they understand all of the bad things we're doing, and then St. Paul's going to come down
Write
and
some
lay the hammer down.
epistles.
Exactly.
Epistles.
Alrighty. Well,
Sorry,
Gregory, thank you for that. Okay, so again,
What else are we talking about
themenshow.com if you want to join our patron community, and make sure to check out the awakenapp.io. All right.
There was a wild colonial boy, Jack Duggan was his name. He was born and raised in Ireland in a place called Castlemaine. He was his father's only son, his mother's pride and joy. We're back on it. And clearly did his parents love the wild colonial boy. Ethan's carrying us in there.
Does Ethan know this?
At the early age of 16 years, he left his native home. And to Australia's sunny shore, he was inclined to roam. I lost it. He robbed the rich, he helped the poor, he shot James McAvoy. A terror to Australia was the wild colonial